Welcome to the Advisor Insights. My name is Louise Broekman. I'm the founder and CEO of the Advisory Board Centre, and I'm very fortunate today to have a special guest, Rob Sherlock from Singapore, and a certified chair. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much, Louise. Great to have this opportunity and a pleasure to be a part of it.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Rob, let's start off with sharing a bit of your story.
Okay. You might be a little bit confused that I am in Singapore, even though I've got New Zealand in the background. But I do come essentially my purpose is I am from the advertising industry. I have been in it for 40 years, but it very much on a multinational basis. I was born in the UK. I was raised in South Africa. I lived and worked a lot in Asia, in the States for about 5 years. But I'm a naturalized New Zealander, and eventually will end up back there. So my story is one of you could say it, a width, like the breadth, and also the sort of intensity of advertising. And if you can imagine what it was like 40 years ago, it was just after the Mad Men era, coming up to what it is at the moment with the fragmentation of media and the complete sort of change of the landscape, especially when you get into social and influencer, etc. It's been an interesting journey, and it's one that I've been lucky enough to be very much engaged with throughout my years, and especially in the latter years. And as you quite rightly know, that I always say I'm in the winter of my career, because to be even in advertising at my age is very unusual. But I certainly try to stay engaged and up to date and relevant. And this journey has eventually led me to the Advisory Board Centre and yourself, because I obviously had an opportunity to become the chair of an advisory board in Australia with an advertising agency or a communications entity there.
Yeah, and it's such a dynamic environment. But you're based in Singapore, chairing an advisory board in Australia, and also chairing an advisory board in Singapore as well. Just more recently, tell us about that experience in advisory boards and being a chair, Rob.
Yeah, certainly, Louise. I mean, I've got to say that I think anybody who's been in any industry for a long time automatically by default has to be relatively successful in the industry. Otherwise, you still wouldn't be there, and you become a sort of mentor advisor. So I thought advisory board was more just, I'll give you some advice, etc., etc. And I didn't really understand the structural integrity of it and the differentiation between the governance board and advisory board. So my experience was in my last role with a Japanese multinational, I was both the global CEO and then became the chairman, and then became an executive advisor, which I must admit in the Japanese sort of context is not the same as any other. So that was my experience before I joined, or I took part in the Advisory Board Centre Certified Chair Masterclass. Then it all changed. It wasn't so much, well, I obviously learned a lot, but I also was able to understand the role, the responsibility, the differentiation between what an advisory board is, should do, etc., and a governance board, of which I've been, involved in both in America and in Japan with PLC. So it that's my experience going up. But walking into your door on, I think it was the Monday morning, and then walking out on the Tuesday evening was a transition that I rarely go through, because we all presume and assume we know something. But I think the journey that you took us through, and I do share the sentiment of everybody else in that masterclass, was phenomenal. So now I do feel equipped, and subsequent after that, I've engaged, as you said, I'm the chair of a board of advisors in Australia, and on the advisory board for a Singapore M&A entity. So very excited by both of those. Still not so much learning, but refining how I engage and add value.
It's interesting, isn't it, where you look at your professional career and then your career as an advisor, being able to build on your experience and build on the individual experiences as you go as well. You constantly learn and refine your craft, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Obviously, and I've always said that experience is a great thing, but experience is also an encumbrance, because you are more automatic to sort of go back and you flip it forward and said, well, I went through this situation and Now, as an advisor, you obviously have that as equipment, but you've virtually got to try to nurture the company and the individuals you're advising to let them ultimately make the decision. You steer them obviously into the direction you believe is the fallow ground. So it's I think the biggest difference is, especially if you've been a leader in terms of on a governance sort of a board, or in the C-suite, it's a different engagement, and it takes a bit of tact, and it takes a little bit of stepping back and knowing what your role is as an advisor. And there's certainly no lesser, it's just a different role.
Yeah, we've had many discussions about the difference between understanding a business or a leader versus judging them, and the role of the advisor is being able to give them that space. But you've got to give yourself space too, don't you, to not jump in and try and solve problems for other people.
That's exactly right. My biggest thing is just shut up, Rob, and I should have that plastered.
And that is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, trust me, if I see a nail, I want to hit it down.
It's a very genuine experience too, isn't it? You've got to be yourself and just trust in the process and trust in the people that are around the table as well.
You're so right, Louise. I mean, it's one of the things, and I think we all understand the process of certain things, and if you follow a certain sort of protocol or process, you're going to eventually get to a place. But I think being an advisor is almost that periphery as well, where you have to understand the emotion as well. You have to understand some of the the factors that the angst and everything, because the beautiful thing is you're removed from the day-to-day. You're removed from, I suppose, the direct governance and the fiduciary responsibility, and therefore you can take on that very much a role where you can play a more empathetic understanding, and based upon those emotional principles, I think a more refined and defined advice, and not just this sort of business knee-jerk, first quarter result based leadership.
It's the human story that sits behind the numbers, isn't it?
So much so.
What advice would you give business owners, Rob? Have you got top 3 tips?
So, yeah, I I do think for business owners, and again, they should first of all understand exactly the difference in between, what an advisory board does, should do, delivers, and in comparison to a governance entity or board. But I would say, first of all, define the playground. In other words, what do they specifically want out of an advisory board? And that can really manage to take on many shapes. So I won't go any further on that. But it's also clarify expectations. In other words, where is it going to be? Where do they want, with the help of the advisory board, the company to be within X amount of time? So have that there, and also set the rules of engagement, both physically or rationally and emotionally. Because, I think as an advisor, you're also a bit of a, depending on the engagement, a mentor. You're also a little bit of a coach. You're also a little bit of a, you can throw in other stuff, but I think you've got to define that. And it also manages to define itself when you start speaking with the business owner. But I think it's just a pretty, and this is up to the advisor, is to clarify or help them clarify, the space, the engagement.
And that, the role of the chair is critical in that, isn't it, to get that clarity in that thinking. And tips for advisors. It's an important role to be an advisor, and you've been really successful in this space in a really short period of time. So what tips would you provide other advisors?
Well, thanks, Louise. Look, I've often said that there are three things in life. It's your passion, your purpose, and your potential. Your passion is what you love. Your potential, your purpose is what you do, in other words, what you experienced at, what your, everything that you've learned. And your potential is where you're going, so your outcomes. So it's exactly the same for advisors. I think, first of all, and this is it, unless you've got the passion for the opportunity, in other words, to make a difference, to really engage, to engage with not just the head, but the heart as well. For me, I just can't engage. I just go like, well, it's not just a job. I have got to be emotionally engaged. The other thing is I do believe that it's important to set, both for yourself and for the entity you're working with, to set short-term achievable goals. In other words, and again, you define this often for yourself and with who you're working with, but after 3 months, this is how I want to be playing, or this is how much I want to be contributing, etc. And make sure it's goal orientated, and it could be 6 months, it could be 9 months. You can obviously course correct it if things are wrong or not going the way you want, but it's for yourself and for the relationship and your engagement. And the third thing, and I have been having a lot of this, which has always been a bit of part of my life, but have fun. I'm having a lot of fun. I was talking to the business owner of the company I'm chair of the other day, and we're, you build up a relationship, and and we're talking about life, about families, and this is sort of off script, I know, but we have fun, and we know what we're there to do. I know what I'm there to do, but it's certainly, it's to enjoy it. So those are my sort of three rough and ready sort of tips, if they can be that. But I've got to say, Louise, and you're very much aware of this. I think you asked at the end of the class earlier this year for everybody to give a little bit of a summary of what they got out of the course and how they feel going forward. And I basically said, well, you've absolutely ruined my retirement. And I said that half jokingly, but it's just been fantastic. Thank you for ruining my retirement, because I seem to be stumbling into more and more, opportunities where I have fun, where I can exert, my passion, my potential, and it's so far it's a good journey. I'm only a few months into it.
It's just really wonderful to rescue from that from retirement there, Rob.
I was going to be there. Skiing down that mountain.
There'll be plenty of time that you've got too much work to do and too much to give.
Exactly.
Rob, it's just wonderful seeing your journey in such a short period of time and the impact that you're already having, and being part of the founding members in Singapore as well. It's great to see these communities really thriving and making an impact in a global scale too. So it's a very exciting journey. So thank you for sharing your insights, and I look forward to doing another one of these, and hopefully you won't be in retirement. You'll be just kicking on, doing even more.
Thanks so much, Louise. It's a pleasure talking to you as usual. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Bye for now.
See ya.